Hello and welcome to this SUPboarder video. We're going to be covering some general paddling techniques to help you paddle stronger and more efficiently. All paddlers should be aiming to paddle with more efficiency and more power so you're able to stay on the water longer and also prevent yourself from injury by using larger muscle groups. We will be covering some of the most important aspects of improving your stroke, including understanding the fundamental technique elements that combine to allow for smoother strokes and easier paddle transitions. And also we'll be covering the 5 phases of the paddle stroke and the elements and technique involved with this. To firstly tidy up our technique, there are a few general elements that we need to understand before we start taking our first strokes and understanding the 5 phases. Number 1, make sure you are always looking forward and keeping your head up. This will improve your balance and allow you to see where you are going. Number 2, to hold the paddle correctly with control and power, firstly hold the paddle above your head and make a right angle with your elbows so your hands are gripping the paddle correctly. Any variation to this and you won't be paddling efficiently. Number 3, keep your back straight when you paddle and engage your core muscles to help with this. Number 4, stack your hands on top of each other to keep your paddle vertical. You can do this by pushing your top hand out to the rail of the board, as this creates a solid foundation to help you tracking and moving in a straighter line. This way you also don't have to switch sides too often when you're paddling, but it also adds power to your stroke as you have to engage those larger muscles. Number 5, engage your core. All of the techniques in this video will help you to more engage your core, but you need to remember that it is not your arms pulling you through the water. It is the power and thrust you generate from your body propelling the board forward. Now let's learn about the 5 phases of our paddling stroke so we can better understand where good technique fits in and how to incorporate it into your paddling. The 5 phases of our paddle stroke are: Number 1, reach. This is the moment before we enter the paddle blade in the water. Number 2, catch. This is where we enter the paddle blade in the water. Number 3, power. The power phase is the length of the stroke where we generate the most power. Number 4, release. This is also known as an exit as we bring our paddle out of the water. Number 5, recovery, which is where we transition into our next stroke and bring the paddle back around to the reach phase. Starting with the reach phase, this sets us up for getting the most out of your stroke. If you can gain extra reach, this will mean you can add more strength in the power phase of your stroke, which equals a more efficient and powerful paddle. The way we can gain more reach is by adjusting our shoulder positions and hinging slightly at our hips. Now both of these moves translates into engaging our core, and this will be vital for the power phase. Looking at our shoulder position, your top arm shoulder should be rolled back and your bottom arm shoulder forward to increase your reach. This creates a slight rotation in your chest so it opens and faces slightly toward the opposite side you are paddling on. Immediately, we find that this extends our reach so we can confidently enter the blade in the water for the catch phase. We keep our bottom arm extended and our top arm relaxed and bent slightly. To show you on land, if we roll our top shoulder back and bottom shoulder forward, we create that slight rotation in the chest and increase the paddle angle entering the water. This is going to really improve your paddling technique and will also engage muscles in your back and core to create slightly more power from your stroke. Hinging from our hips will also add some further reach, but more importantly, this will set us up in readiness to thrust forward as we exit the stroke and during the power phase. The next phase is our catch phase, where we enter the paddle blade in the water. To increase our speed, we want to drive the paddle into the water on a positive blade angle, so we always maximize the time spent in the power phase of the stroke. If we can use the shoulder position adjustment we just learned to increase our reach, the goal here is to spear the blade of the paddle into the water and drive it down to bury the full length of the blade so we can maintain speed during the whole stroke. As we begin to enter the power phase, this is where we can gain the most speed and power to propel ourselves forward. You are pushing down with your top hand whilst applying most of your weight and pressure to the paddle. Remember, you want to be sure you are engaging your core muscles and thrusting the board forward during this step. So you can start to use your hips as thrust and transfer power through your legs to propel the board forwards. You should only bring the paddle back as far as your feet before initiating the release or exit phase, because after you pass your feet with the paddle, the blade becomes negatively angled. This adds resistance to your paddle and slows you down, resulting in an inefficient paddling stroke. To remember when to release the paddle, aim to keep your top hand higher than your chest or even at neck height, so you'll be naturally releasing the paddle at the right time. Another thing to look for when paddling is to see if you scoot water behind your paddle when you exit the blade out of the water. If you splash water, this means you have an inefficient paddling stroke and can fix it up with a couple of simple changes. The recovery phase incorporates the transition between ending your paddle stroke and transitioning into the next reach phase. To enable a smooth transition and recovery, first, drop your top hand to the side so the paddle blade sits just above the water. You do not want to be lifting the paddle blade too high out of the water at this point. At the same time, you want to twist your wrists toward the nose of the board to keep the blade of the paddle facing down and flat to the water. This offers you the least resistance when transitioning into your next paddle stroke. Doing both of these things will enable you to have a higher stroke rate and a smoother paddling stroke. This is also the time to reset and relax, standing yourself back up to be ready to initiate the next reach phase. By combining these elements and improving our overall SUP technique, it means you're going to paddle more efficiently, which means you can stay on the water for longer and prevent injury. Thanks so much for tuning in to this SUPboarder video. We really hope that you got a lot out of it. And until next time, make sure to stay safe out on the water, understand the conditions before you head out, and try to combine some of these technique elements into your paddling stroke.